Research center staff run desperately as if they are afraid of some terrifying entity. As colleagues are dragged away one by one, the remaining 2 workers don't dare to pause even for a moment and quickly escape towards the lab at the end of the hallway. A woman merely stumbles and falls, only to be mercilessly abandoned by Dr. Carmack ahead of her, accompanied by horrifying roars. The woman's screams completely vanish. Dr. Carmack turns pale with fear. As he turns around to contact for help on the computer, the steel door behind him is instantly deformed by a massive force. However, just 1 second before the monster breaks through the door, Carmack successfully sends a distress signal to Earth headquarters. It turns out this is a remote base on Mars, but humanity does not yet possess the capability for interstellar travel. This is only because, decades earlier, archaeologists discovered a relic in the Nevada desert that seemed to be left by an alien civilization. Through research, they found that this relic was actually a portal to Mars. To uncover the origins of this portal, humans spent 20 years building a research base on Mars, only for an accident to occur. Soon after, Sarge, a member of the Marine Corps, received a special mission. The mission was to go to the Mars research base to handle this sudden incident and rescue the scientists there, as well as retrieve their research findings. Due to the urgency, the squad departed immediately upon receiving the notification. After learning about the situation on the flight, they landed in a clearing, the site of the portal to the Mars base, which required taking an elevator deep underground. The portal's operator stated that the Mars base had a total of 85 full-time staff. For safety, the base had been completely sealed off after the incident, and no one was allowed to return to Earth. The floating liquid sphere in front of them was the transportation device. The moment the squad touched the sphere, they were instantly transported to the distant Mars. Though the portal was convenient, it also came with certain risks. The portal's operator, Pinky, suffered a mishap with the coordinates, resulting in his lower body being transported to another location. Although Pinky survived, he was left to live the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Pinky informed Sarge that all surviving personnel were currently quarantined in the hall. To prevent them from leaving on their own, Sarge assigned a squad member to guard the main door until the crisis was completely resolved, while he and the remaining members entered the lobby to commence their mission. At this point, a woman slowly approached. She was an archaeologist and also the sister of squad member John, named Samantha. Samantha would lead the squad into the research center to retrieve the research materials and assist in locating the missing researchers. According to the information provided by Samantha, the research center was divided into 3 departments: archaeology, genetic engineering, and weapons research. Trapped in the lab were Carmack and his 5 researchers, their fate unknown. From a phone that had not been hung up, they recorded a chilling scream, indicating the grim situation inside. Upon hearing this, Sarge immediately had Samantha open the sealed steel door of the research center. The dark corridor emitted a sinister aura, keeping everyone on edge as they cautiously moved forward. To enhance the efficiency of the search and rescue, they could only proceed in pairs and marked the checked labs with a marker. When 2 squad members reached the genetic engineering department, they were shocked by what they saw. Each glass container housed a bizarre specimen, and various animals used for experiments were kept in cages, with an electrified underground cell at the very back. It seemed that some horrific biological experiments were underway. The armory was also full of weapons, and there was also a very powerful biochemical energy gun called the BFG. Unfortunately, this weapon was locked in a separate chamber and could only be opened with the fingerprint of an authorized personnel. Meanwhile, John escorted his sister to the archaeological lab to retrieve research materials. While Samantha copied the data, a strange skeleton in the middle caught John's attention. Samantha explained that it was not a human skeleton but belonged to an intelligent creature from Mars, marking it as the research center's most significant discovery. Although their appearance was similar to humans, they had an extra pair of chromosomes, which endowed them with superhuman strength and a more intelligent brain. Their cells divided at a rate 50 times faster than humans. This meant they had extremely rapid self-healing abilities and were almost immune to all diseases. However, this ability was not natural, as they found that some aliens, like humans, only had 23 pairs of chromosomes. Therefore, Samantha deduced that the extra pair of chromosomes was a synthetic chromosome created through some form of bioengineering, akin to a biochemical agent that could enhance strength. Yet, how such an advanced civilization came to extinction remains an unsolved mystery. At this time, the intercom suddenly heard the voice of his teammates. It turned out to be two teammates came to Carmack's accident laboratory. Seeing that an 18-centimeter thick steel door had been forcibly opened, they realized something terrifying might be inside. But as they entered the lab, they saw a figure flash by. Hearing gunshots, the others quickly arrived. And when they caught up to the figure, they discovered it was Carmack. Carmack was trembling in a corner, clearly deeply frightened. However, Carmack was holding the severed arm of a female researcher, and there were obvious bite marks on his neck. Samantha attempted to approach Carmack to inquire about the whereabouts of the others. Unexpectedly, an agitated Carmack suddenly tore off his own ear in front of everyone. Carmack's bizarre actions startled everyone, since it seemed impossible to get any information from Carmack. Sarge ordered them to split up again, continuing in pairs to search for the missing personnel. Samantha, escorted by Duke, took Carmack to the medical room to understand what had happened to Carmack. Samantha immediately drew a tube of his blood, but Samantha found that Carmack's blood had undergone strange changes, containing many black substances, and the computer showed his genes were slowly altering. However, when Samantha returned to the infirmary, she was shocked to find that Carmack had suddenly disappeared from the bed. On the other side, the squad heard noises from the genetic engineering department. John quickly led his teammates to investigate. They found that all the animals in the cages had disappeared, leaving only a blood-stained scene. While they were searching carefully, they suddenly saw a surviving researcher with his back to them. But when the researcher turned around, they realized that he was eating the mice in the cage, and it seemed that the animals had been killed by him. Before they could react, the researcher crazily lunged at them. What exactly had happened to these people? They intended to continue exploring, but suddenly, another strange figure appeared behind them. As they chased the monster, they reported their situation to their teammates. However, by the time they caught up, the monster had already escaped through the sewer. After regrouping, the squad split up to search the sewers, leaving Destroyer to guard the entrance. Soon, Goat discovered an anomaly. Just as his flashlight malfunctioned, seeing a pair of eyes in the darkness, Goat thought it was one of the missing researchers. But in the next second, although John arrived just in time to eliminate the monster, Goat was already on his last breath. Realizing that the situation was not as simple as it seemed, Sarge had no choice but to arrange for the staff in the hall to prepare for evacuation. Meanwhile, the injured Goat and the monster's body were both taken to the medical room. Despite John's best efforts to save him, Goat's life could not be saved. An angry Sarge immediately questioned Samantha about where these monsters were coming from. However, Samantha was clueless, as the biological entities from Mars had been extinct and could not possibly appear in the base. When John suggested that there might be more than one monster, Sarge immediately ordered the activation of the portal to send all personnel back to Earth and to completely seal the portal to prevent these monsters from following them. Once everyone was evacuated, Sarge decisively led a team back into the research center. They had to eliminate all the monsters. Meanwhile, Samantha, accompanied by Duke, performed an autopsy on the monster's corpse, wanting to understand what kind of creature it was. However, during the process, a monster attacked Duke, who fought back while retreating into the medical room. At the same time, Samantha quickly closed the nano-wall, trapping the pursuing monster solidly within the wall. Simultaneously, the squad faced a crisis while searching for monsters. Just as they discovered the bodies of two researchers in the archaeological pit, Mac, who was on guard, was suddenly attacked by a monster. This monster appeared even more powerful, instantly crushing Mac's head in a moment. At that moment, John spotted traces of the monster, but unfortunately, it was too fast and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Following the traces on the ground, they realized the monster had returned to the research center. Sarge immediately instructed Pinky to be on high alert and to blow up the portal if anything unusual was detected, while also ordering the team to split up and find and kill this monster at all costs. Later, Sarge went to the armory, where he used the severed hand of a researcher to open the chamber and successfully retrieved the ultimate weapon, the BFG. Meanwhile, Samantha and Duke, who were dissecting the monster's body in the medical room, were unaware that the deceased Goat had eerily resurrected behind them. When they turned and saw the anomaly, Goat inexplicably crashed himself into the tempered glass, committing suicide. Seeing this, Samantha seemed to understand something. It appeared Goat knew he was turning into a monster, so he chose to end his own life. And the monsters in the base were indeed the mutated missing researchers. Realizing the dire situation, Portman from the team concocted a plan under the pretext of needing to use the restroom to send a distress signal. No sooner had Portman left than Destroyer, who was standing guard, was attacked by a monster. And before Portman could send out the message in the restroom, he was snatched up by a monster from the ceiling. Sarge, who rushed to the scene, decisively opened fire. Although the BFG was exceptionally powerful, it failed to kill the monster in an instant, losing 2 more teammates. Sarge had no choice but to stop chasing the monster and instead take their bodies back to the medical room. Looking at the monster stuck in the wall and the fresh blood on the glass, Sarge immediately asked what had happened here. Samantha then shared her findings. The monster on the wall was indeed Carmack, as the missing left ear of the monster was the best proof. This also confirms Samantha's suspicion that all the monsters are mutated by the researchers. As to why they had turned into such creatures, Samantha was still clueless, but she promised to try to find a way to treat them. Sarge didn't want to waste time. His mission was to eliminate all security threats, so he shot Carmack on the wall without hesitation. Afterward, Sarge questioned Samantha again about what kind of research was being conducted here, but Samantha still insisted that she was only responsible for archaeology and truly did not know what was happening in the genetic labs. It was only when they examined the research data Samantha had copied that they discovered the full truth. It turned out that since Carmack discovered that Martians had 24 pairs of chromosomes, he had been secretly conducting genetic experiments on death row inmates. They injected synthetic chromosomes into the bodies of these inmates in an attempt to transform them, but in less than an hour, the inmates underwent genetic mutations. Upon learning the truth, John wanted to destroy the research data, fearing that bringing it back to Earth could lead to even more terrible events. However, Sarge strongly objected, stating that the data must be brought back as it was company property, and they were just following orders without the authority to make such decisions on their own. Under Sarge's insistence, Samantha continued to copy the remaining data, but at that moment, Pinky, who was guarding the portal, suddenly noticed something approaching. Sarge immediately rushed over, instructing Pinky to blow up the portal. However, by the time they arrived, the several-inch-thick steel door had already been breached, and Pinky had disappeared. Clearly, the monsters had made their way to the Earth base through the portal. To eradicate the monsters and prevent a greater disaster, the squad had no choice but to return to Earth. John also rushed back to the medical room to prepare to leave with Samantha, but at that moment, Samantha made a startling discovery that she had to verify before leaving. She took out a piece of Portman's brain tissue and approached the monster's tongue, which immediately reacted. Then Samantha performed the same action with Destroyer's brain tissue, but this time, the tongue showed no reaction at all. Clearly, the synthetic chromosome selectively infects hosts. When the infected host has violent or perverse evil genes, they mutate into mindless monsters. Otherwise, they transform into powerful superhumans. It was precisely because of this unpredictable factor that the Martian civilization that created it slowly headed towards extinction. The purpose of building the portal was indeed to escape their planet and seek refuge on Earth. Hearing this, John realized the gravity of the situation and urgently called Samantha to return to Earth with him because Sarge, in an effort to prevent the spread of infection, was prepared to kill everyone in the Earth base. If Samantha's conjecture was correct, many innocent people would suffer, and they had to stop it. Unfortunately, when Sarge and his team arrived at the Earth base, it was already strewn with corpses, but Sarge would not spare even the dead. To prevent them from becoming monsters, he would kill any living person just the same. To their surprise, many had already turned into zombie-like creatures. Sarge, wielding a Gatling gun, decisively killed them. John and his sister Samantha quickly returned to Earth, and seeing the hellish scene before them, John urgently called for Sarge. However, Sarge was unmoved. Upon seeing a living researcher, he did not hesitate to pull the trigger. Before leaving, Sarge ordered his team to thoroughly cleanse the area. Once Sarge returned to the transport pod, Samantha quickly informed him of her findings. Even though he knew some people would not be infected, Sarge still intended to carry out indiscriminate cleansing, because his mission was to stop at nothing to prevent any potential threat to Earth. As the standoff continued, Duke arrived with Pinky, who had miraculously survived. After examining him, Samantha confirmed that Pinky was not infected, but Sarge argued that her word wasn't final on the matter. Just as Sarge was about to shoot Pinky, the kid hurriedly arrived, revealing that he had just found many survivors who appeared uninfected. The kid doesn't want to kill innocent people, but disobeying orders means death. Sarge's extreme action shocked everyone. Realizing he could be next, Pinky was forced to pull out his gun in self-defense, but Sarge reacted with a look of terror. The group, snapping to action, quickly pursued the monster but encountered a large number of zombies along the way. Outnumbered, they were forced to fight while retreating to a nanowall, which malfunctioned at a critical moment and wouldn't close. While everyone is fighting to the death, the monster grabs Duke from the floor. And even Sarge is accidentally dragged away by the zombies behind the wall. John shoots to cover Samantha's escape, but the bullet bounces off the wall and hits him in the stomach. Fortunately, they found a room to hide in before the zombies could catch up. Looking at her severely injured brother, Samantha had a bold idea. She pulled out a syringe of synthetic chromosomes, ready to inject her brother, believing that her righteous brother would surely turn into a superhuman. To be safe, John slowly handed his sister a handgun, in case he mutated. However, Samantha said it wasn't necessary and proceeded to inject the substance into her brother's body. Moments later, John lost consciousness, and when he woke up, he found that his sister had disappeared. John slowly walked to a mirror and touched the blood on his face, only to find that the wound had miraculously healed, clearly showing the drug had taken effect. The next scene became the most iconic of the entire movie, as it truly replicated a first-person shooter game. Along the way, John also managed to kill the monster. When John entered a lab, he encountered Pinky, who had turned into a monster. The sudden attack of the monster makes John suffer a lot, but now John is not the same as before and turns the situation around in a flash. Afterwards, in the corridor, John finally found his sister lying on the ground, fortunately unharmed. Unexpectedly, Sarge, too, had survived with the help of the BFG, though he was clearly infected, evidenced by a distinct bite mark on his neck. A major battle seemed inevitable. After ensuring Samantha's safety, they faced their final showdown. The battle erupted with both using their enhanced agility to dodge each other's attacks. When John chased Sarge to the transport pod chamber and lost sight of him, Sarge seized the opportunity to ambush from the shadows. Seeing Sarge unarmed, John voluntarily emptied the last bullet from his gun, preparing for a one-on-one real man's fight. Although both of their physical abilities had been greatly enhanced, the already formidable Sarge was clearly the more formidable of the two. They fought from the first floor to the second, and John managed to make Sarge suffer, but Sarge quickly broke free. This caused John to fall back to the first floor, and Sarge, taking advantage, wrapped a steel bar around his arm and punched John. John, who was barely able to fight just now, has completely lost his resistance and is being unilaterally suppressed by Sarge. During the course of their fight, Sarge gradually undergoes a mutation. At a critical moment, John spotted the transport portal's activation device and devised a surefire plan. John decisively activated the portal and used all his strength to push Sarge into it. The trapped Sarge struggled in vain and was forcibly sent back to the Mars base. Then, John threw a grenade, killing Sarge and completely destroying the portal at the same time. At the end of the movie, John holds his sister as they take the elevator back to the surface.